Welcome to a Friday Reads, where I talk about what I've read, what I'm reading, what I hope to get to next, and it's been a minute since I've done one of these because just other content has happened. And last week, I didn't have as much to say because it was only like the second day of the month when I would have filmed this or something like that, and I hadn't read that much yet. Now I have read plenty. I think I have 6 things to talk about that I have finished this month so far, a handful of things I'm in the middle of, and a little mini book haul. So we're just going to get into it, starting with the speculative magazine that I read this month, Faya. So this is my first time reading this particular magazine. I've been trying to get into them more this year. If you don't know, there are just short stories and novelettes and novellas that are published in speculative magazines. And this one highlights Black authors in particular, and this was their Haunty Spooky edition. It comes out every quarter. It's like $3 or $4. It was worth every penny I spent because I really enjoyed every story in this collection. I tend to like haunty stories, especially ones that delve into like familial trauma and things like that. There's a story in here where there's a garden that people literally bury their pain in to forget. That was really cool and stuck with me. There's also a lot of Afro-Latine stories in here, which I really love to see because I mean, there aren't that many speculative Latine books that come out, much less Afro-Latine. So that was also really great to see, some great Dominican representation in there. I really liked this. I don't know if maybe I'll highlight some of the stories in maybe the short format or something, just because I don't really ever know how to talk about them on videos here, but I recommend it, especially if nothing was horrifying, I don't think, for me. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. I don't visualize when I read, but it definitely had that like creepy, unsettling atmosphere that had me continuing to read. Oh, there was one story where this girl has this friend at school, and suddenly her friend is different, and unpacking that and what maybe did happen there, it was just like an unsettling unease. I got that in most stories in this collection, and I really liked it. Another one that I don't have physically, so I'll talk about it real quick so I don't forget, and this is Tectonic States. This is the 3rd book in the Sentinels trilogy, and I'll be brief because I think I'm going to do a Should You Read next week, so you'll see my thoughts on the entire series next week. But this was a really good, I think, ending point for the arc of this thought experiment, the thought experiment of what would our world look like if we had this form of democracy. They're micro-democracies, so every 100,000 people get to vote on their own government, and governments don't have to be contiguous and things like that, and there is like a supermajority, and to make sure all of the information in this world is factually accurate, there's this thing called information. And this is kind of sort of the end of that thought experiment. I'll be vague. And I thought it was really interesting. I think the world building and the thought experiment are the strongest points. I think the character work are the weakest points, and it's a very action-heavy, espionage-esque series, which doesn't always work just for my taste. But I'll unpack more of that next week in another video, but I finished another trilogy, and I'm very happy about it. Next up, though, we'll talk about this bad boy, Tender is the Flesh. If you have never heard of this, this is a dystopian translated from an Argentinian author, and it's about a world where suddenly we are not allowed to eat or consume any animal products because there is this virus. Now, obviously that doesn't really make sense, and this book kind of goes into why maybe this was all of a hoax, potentially, but regardless of how we got here, we got to a state where we are only consuming humans, and humans are how we consume all the things we used to do via animals. And it goes through the gory, graphic details of that, and we follow a main character, I think his name is Marcos, and we follow him in kind of an average week of his life initially, and then there's a big time skip for reasons. And it's disturbing. We had a book club discussion of this, and everyone agreed that it was really hard to read at times. There are scenes in here that even, if you're prepared for the human graphic things that are going to happen, there are other scenes that you're just not going to be prepared for. But also just like the discussions and the thought experiment that this author is putting forth. And this was written in 2017, so it cannot be a commentary on our current situation with COVID. But there's so many parallels to how society reacts in this book to a virus versus ours. It's really interesting, the differences and the similarities in that thought experiment for a book that's written really recently, but still significantly before we had our current pandemic. So there's a lot to unpack and think about and discuss, and I'm so glad we read it for a book club because I think that was where it had most of its value for me. In terms of a dystopian book, it's a dystopian book. I have to suspend a lot of my disbelief on how we got here and how this is even a functional system. Like, The science is so wrong, and like I cannot even remotely be convinced this is an efficient system or anything like that. But if I just accept it for the thought experiment it is, which is the role of most dystopians, it was compelling. It had a point, and I liked how it executed that point. All right, temporarily been visited by this monster down here, because yeah, whenever I film and Ryan leaves his office, he yells outside the door. And it's very difficult to film. But into another book I just finished this morning, Chilling Effect. This is fun. This is just the definition of a fun time. If you want a fun space romp that's going to have references to video games and TV shows and stuff like that, but it has so many references to Cuban culture, Spanish language, there are psychic cats on board, like, it's charming. It's a really charming time. There's still a good amount of tension in chapters in this book. Like, it reminds me of when I watched Doctor Who. And I know in the middle of a season of Doctor Who, my characters have a lot of plot armor. And you know that reading this book. There's a fair amount of plot armor. But that doesn't make you still kind of scared in the middle of it. And there are scenarios that the characters are put into in this book where I'm just like, I'm in chapter 8. I know they have to be okay. But also, there are consequences. There are stakes. Like, this is great. This is fantastic. I'm excited to get to the second and third book. The premise of this story is our main character here, Ava. She's the captain of her ship. And, you know, she's kind of your classic trope of that captain on a ship. She's got a chip on her shoulder. She's got, you know, she swears all the time. She's, I don't know, has issues committing to people and connecting and things like that, has a horrible family. And one day she's told that her sister was kidnapped, and now she needs to do all these jobs for this evil organization to save her sister. And that's where the story takes off. It's fun. I only catch the references for the one video game I've ever played, but I hear this also has a lot of Mass Effect inspiration. So if you just want a fun time, I highly recommend, like, look at this cover. This is amazing. This is great. I wish the cats had played more of a role, if I'm being honest. Like, I hope maybe I get more cats in the rest of this series. That's what I would love. And then the other book that I finally finished, I will somehow get a review up or something like that eventually. I just don't even know how to talk about it yet. And that is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. So this book is such a project. It's a standalone fantasy for all of you people who are always looking for that. And if you're someone like me who's always looking for fantasy from different perspectives that are unapologetically influenced by the culture of the author, this has that in spades. I am always looking for that. I find that really interesting. And then it still has the theatrics of classic oral storytelling that I love. I grew up in a household that my dad was a choreographer for musicals and directors. Like, live action plays and oral storytelling are my bread and butter of how I fell in love with stories. So when books really capture that and use that as their storytelling narrative device, I eat that up. And that's what happens in A Spear Cuts Through Water. We are transported to this stage as the observer character, and we are told the legend of kind of our old country, the old country of our Lola, our grandmother. And that's also kind of interspersed with our remembering of our past. And I keep saying our because it's the second person part of it. But at its core, this is a story of these two warriors who have very complicated paths coming together because they kind of have a mutual goal of transporting this ancient goddess from one part of the kingdom to the other to effect change upon this land, hopefully positive change. And there's a lot of classic fantastical things that happen along the way. There are talking monkeys and tortoises. There's just so many wonderful fantastical things. There's family drama. There's so much that I enjoyed. And at first I felt distant from my characters when I read this, but then I got really invested and I got really close to these two people as they are learning to trust each other and are traveling. If you want disability representation, one of our main characters does not have one of his arms. I personally thought it didn't fall into a lot of classic ableism tropes that happen in fantasy, but I do not have that representation, and there are basically no reviews for this out, so I don't have an Own Voices reviewer to look at to see what they thought of the representation. But if you were looking to have a main character who is disabled, and where that's not necessarily his entire identity, but it's also not erased, and it's not magically solved, that is in this book. It's great, and you can tell how indulgent it is. Like, this was a project that was near and dear to the author's heart, and I don't think it'll work for everyone, but I really loved it, and I'm excited to reconsume it one day. it was a great time. So I think those are all the things I finished. If I find my little sheet of paper over here. Yes. Now, what am I in the middle of? Firstly, I started Lobezona. Now, this is wonderful so far. I'm very early days. Like, how many pages am I even in this? I am 70 pages into Lobezona. This is about this girl here. She has stars pupils in her eyes, I think. Yes, star pupils in a sun iris. And basically her family, her and her mom have been on the run from her father's family because of this trait she has. And there are, I think, supernatural implications that haven't really panned out, but we've been seeing the issues. But in running away, they are undocumented immigrants in Florida. And at the start of the book, her mother is taken away by ICE, and then she's also starting to realize her supernatural connections to this other world. That's all I know so far. I think that's also the back of the book. And I'm loving the writing of this. So this is also an Argentinian author. And I'm just loving seeing a bilingual character. Like, our main character is bilingual, and I love the fluid between English and Spanish sentences and getting the cultural unpacking of living in this part of Florida where not everyone's Argentinian. There's some Cuban people or some Puerto Ricans, and the things that are consistent and inconsistent between the languages, it just feels really authentic in that way, and I'm really loving how that's integrated into this story that also just has wonderful writing. I'm really enjoying the writing of this. So I'm hopefully that'll keep up. I was reading this primarily, and then Chilling Effect took over my life. So this will be something I get back into very soon. Another one I've been reading is The Hacienda, which is exactly what I was hoping it would be. I picked up the audiobook because the narrators are phenomenal. There's two, one for the priest and one for our main character, Beatrice. And I think one of my favorite parts of supernatural, haunting, horror stuff are haunted houses. I think they're awesome. Like, I'm trying to think, most of my favorite haunting things this year have been house-related. And it's not different here. She travels to this ranch because it's supposed to be her second chance at life. She literally spent all of her energy to get married to this man so she could be the main woman of this ranch and have a place for her mom to live. And then she gets there, and it is messed up. So then she seeks the help of this priest to figure it out. And there have been some creepy things. I'm excited. I love the chemistry between these characters. I love how creepy it feels. I love the audio narration. For this time of year, I'm so glad I saved it, like, truly. And I'm getting some information about the Mexican Revolution that I really didn't know a lot about. Not really taught that in school, and it's been a while since I've thought about it. And to me, this is doing what I was hoping Mexican Gothic would do for me. I liked Mexican Gothic. I gave it 4 stars. But I didn't, feel creepy or love it that much. And I think part of that is I love Beatrice as a character, and I love Andres. I think I'm just more connected to these characters. And I'm actually more actively scared and creeped out by what's happening. It's a creepy hacienda, that's for sure. And also there's just this isolation theme. She's the new person in this village, and, who can she trust and things like that. That's all very fun. I'm also in the middle of The Golden Fool. To say I'm in the middle of it is kind of an overstatement. I'm 3 chapters in. So I think that's 50 pages or something like that for a Hobb book, maybe 60. I don't know. She writes long chapters. And we'll see what happens. I don't really know what the plot is. That's kind of my feeling of when I read The Golden Fools and all of the Fitz books. It's I think I'm just along for the ride and I don't really know why I'm here, is generally what happens. But we'll see. And I've also started, and this is going to be probably a 2-month project because we're only reading a story a day because I'm buddy reading this with Kristen and Shannon, but we're reading Terraform, which is a new short story anthology that was published. It's by these people who on Vice would release short stories, I think, on their blog and stuff like that. And there are a handful of new short stories in here, so they would be Hugo eligible. And we've only read 2 stories so far and a preface and introduction, and I basically have loved every word I've read so far. Now, is that a lot of words? No, I think we've only read 20-some pages. But the first 2 short stories we read, I liked both of them a lot. I thought they were appropriately paced. They were meant to be short stories, so I am very interested in how they curated and collected the rest of the stories in this collection. This is definitely about the relationship between technology and potential futures with humans and society, and it's split into 3 parts: Watch, Worlds, and Burn. The first story is actually called Burn, and it's about a future dystopian world where we need to have jobs for people and we ran out of jobs, so instead they go to these factories to generate random numbers by just doing things or having things attached to them, and it's about a person's response to that. And then the second one was really interesting because it was written in 2014, and it's about it's about 3 individuals. It's about a person who's trying to order cat food, who can't leave their house because they're stuck waiting for a sofa to be delivered. Uber, which, if we remember in 2014, Uber was a thing, but it wasn't the thing that it is now. And then we have a delivery service person. And we see these 3 perspectives of how Uber's trying to coordinate things to make things the most efficient, and how the delivery person is doing the best they can, but it's still not fast enough for the person who doesn't know the context of everything and then gives this person 1 star. And I really liked it. I will say that, none of this has been optimistic, but sometimes I dislike stories that validate my worldview or feel cathartic, and they're really well crafted so far. So that's in the section watch of this anthology, and I'm excited to get into this more. I also have the audiobook for this, so I've been listening to it while reading it, and I recommend. So those are the things that I am reading, and I think up next, because next week is the live show, I am reading Bands of Mourning, which is my favorite Miss Mourning Era 2 book, last I checked, so we'll see. My girl Starrett gets to have some time, so that'll be fun. I'm going to be reading this and The Secrets of Mistborn, for sure, because we're going to discuss both of those at the live show next week, and tonight we will be having reading sprints for this, or whatever you want to do. I will be reading this book tonight, and so I hope to see you then. We'll have Roger, Stephanie, and Elle, maybe some other people, or whatever. It'll be really fun. And now I'll show you a mini book haul, which means, Pooh, I'm going to have to let you down. You want to say bye to people, and then I'll let you down, and you'll be quiet? It's not going to happen, but whoop, hitting the camera. But there he is, in all of his fuzzy glory. You put up with so much, you know that? Okay, so the first one I'll show you guys, because I just had to buy it. Like, I had to. Is The Genesis of Misery by Neon Yang. Like, look at this cover. Like, look at that. I couldn't not. I don't even think I'll love it, because I don't think the prose style of Neon Yang works with my brain that much, but I needed it. I needed it. So when I saw it at the bookstore, I waffled, and then I bought it. And then the other one just finally came in the mail, and that's my special edition of Oleander's Sword with the, it's just so pretty. It's just a really nice edition. I still don't understand what the UK has against letting books breathe. And what I mean by that is this is a hardback book. And I've never actually had hardback books that have tight spines. That's not like a thing I'm used to. But like, they just don't want to open. They're just like, no, we will not open. Like, what do you guys do to your poor spines? I don't understand it, but it's gorgeous, and it's going to look stunning on my shelves next to the Jasmine Throne. So that's this video, a little life update, and, as you probably have seen, I'm attempting shorts. I don't know how long I'm going to try them, but if you have any ideas for things you'd like to see in the 60-second or less short form, tell me down below. I will think about it. I am very old lady mode on this. I have not done TikToks. I have not done Reels. I really don't know how this works. So I'm trying my best, because YouTube is definitely very pro people doing shorts. I hope you're not mad if you see a few more. I can't imagine it'll be a lot of my feed, because I find doing long form way easier. Like, I don't know how to be brief. Brevity does not know me. So we'll see how this experiment works out. But I've also been feeling pretty creative this month, so it's been a fun thing to learn and think about, even with my I'm too old for this mental frustrations. If you want to leave an emoji though, I don't know, leave a space cat type related thing, because this cover is just so great, truly. Let me know what you're reading, doing, watching. House of the Dragon is still great. I'm just gonna keep saying that. I have nothing more profound to say other than great TV, having a great time. Also, we watched She-Hulk, and that was fun. That's all I have. So, if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.